Hello, my name is Samuel George London and welcome to Milford Green Behind the Scenes. I am the writer of Milford Green, which is available from the publisher's website signalcomics.com/MG if you haven't purchased a copy already. So, behind the scenes. It all began when I was taking a walk in the rolling hills of southern England, when out of nowhere this vision of an alien spacecraft kind of shot across the sky and crash landed in the hills beneath me. And this kind of, percolated in my mind, so to speak, until I went to a local attraction where I live called Milestones. Now, Milestones is this kind of mock Victorian village in a warehouse, basically, but it's a really great place to take the family. But it's absolutely fascinating. They've got all sorts of bits and bobs and real relics from the Victorian era, and I started to put this vision of an alien spacecraft together with this mock-up Victorian village, and thought, you know what? I think it'd be really, really cool if there were aliens in this village. And so I started to think about how a story could be made up from that. And one of the things that I noticed at Milestones was this poster, which I took a photo of, as you can see here, and it was about the Diamond Jubilee for Queen Victoria, and kind of there are all sorts of bits and bobs in that. But one of the things that struck out to me was the fact that it had a procession of decorated bicycles. Now, I didn't really think much of the decorated bicycles, but I thought bicycle race would be really, really cool. And so that's something that I've put into Milford Green. And as you can see from the first page here, we've basically replicated that poster onto Milford Green, and kind of put that in with the whole storyline, basically. So how did I come up with the story? So I kind of had this idea about aliens and Victorians, but how do you go about writing a story? This was my first story writing exercise, and one of the things that I first came across when Googling how to write a story was Dan Harmon's Story Circle. And for those that don't know, Dan Harmon is the guy behind the TV series Community, as well as Rick and Morty. You can find his Story Circle at this link here. And as he says, it's Story Structure 101. And this is the basic outline of the 8 points that he talks about. So number 1, a character is in a zone of comfort. Number 2, but they want something. Number 3, they enter an unfamiliar situation. Number 4, adapt to it. Number 5, get what they wanted. Number 6, pay a heavy price for it. Number 7, then return to their familiar situation. Then number 8, having changed. Now, I must say, from here on out, spoiler warning. So if you haven't read Milford Green yet, please do before moving forward, because I give some story points here in regard to Dan Harmon's Story Circle, and it'll probably spoil it for you. So make sure that you read Milford Green and then come back to this point if you haven't read it already. Right, moving on. So number 1, a character in a zone of comfort. In regard to Milford Green, Alfie, who's our main character, is an ironmonger engineer and spare time inventor. So number 2, but they want something. So Alfie wants to impress Mary and fall in love with her. Number 3, they enter an unfamiliar situation. So Alfie comes across a crashed spacecraft with an alien inside who asks him to eliminate some evil aliens and take the Wuran, which is this kind of potentially planet-destroying object, back to safety at the United Galactic Alliance. or UGA. So, number 4, they adapt to it. Alfie sets up a Home Alone style gauntlet for the evil aliens. So he's just adapting to the situation. He's accepted it and kind of going for it. Right, number 5, they get what they wanted. So Alfie does kill the aliens and impresses Mary at the same time, but pay a heavy price for it. So Mr. Wells, who is his mentor and next door neighbour, and Mary's father, dies in the process of all of this, or process, as my PowerPoint presentation says there. But hey ho, that's the way it goes. So number 7, then they return to their familiar situation. So not exactly returning to his familiar situation, but does end up with Mary to set off for the United Galactic Alliance with the Wurin in hand. So the last point, having changed for better or worse, Alfie becomes a more assertive person from all of this. So this is something that I'm for future stories that I want to tell, that I'm starting to explore right now. This is kind of a bit of a test that I'm starting to use. I have heard you can read the comments on the website where this is hosted, comments of people kind of criticising this and things like that. But for somebody that's never told stories before, this is a great place to start off and kind of use it as a test to run your story through. So just make sure that you hit all these points and you're not going to have gone too far wrong, I think. So I'd written the story, and it was time to move on to writing the script. And there are loads of different ways to write a script, and it's particularly kind of specific to comic book writing, because compared to writing a novel, it's very, very different. But I decided to use a table format with rows and columns. So as you can see here, I used Google Docs for this. I wholeheartedly recommend that you use something like Google Docs or some sort of cloud-based thing. You can always download it kind of to have offline, but having this one document that you can access from absolutely anywhere on the internet, I think is amazing, because then you don't end up with lots of different versions of it and you're not sure which version is the most up-to-date one. You have one version, that's it. And then when it comes to working with an artist as well, you both have one version between you as well. So if you make any updates, then they'll be updated at the same time, so you don't really have to worry about that sort of thing. But as I said, I use a table format. So first column is page panel. So 1.1 is first page, first panel. 1.2, first page, second panel, so on and so forth all the way through. Second column is art description, so obviously description for the artist about what's happening in the panel, and then dialogue, any dialogue that's happening there. On the first page there's no dialogue, but you can imagine what that looks like. Also in the art description I included kind of links and things like that for the artist to look at, which can be incredibly helpful for them to get an idea of what you're trying to say as a writer, because trying to get what you're trying to think of across to an artist that you might not have met in real life and is, from a completely different country, for instance, in my case, then, having sending images across is kind of paramount to making sure that they get as close to your vision as possible. The other thing that I do, as you can see here on the second row, which is kind of light grey, I always put those in between each pages, so that I can put in any lighting as well. So in this case, lighting, sunny blue sky. It could be nighttime, it could be a rainy day, could be absolutely anything. So kind of putting the lighting there helps it get, again, the artist vision what you're trying to get across, and helps kind of in the final process as well. So I'd written the script, ended up being 40 pages. So now it was time to find an artist. And like most people, I searched on DeviantArt diviantart.com, and I just simply typed in Victorian into the search, and kind of specifically into cartoons and comics section on DeviantArt, and kind of looking through pages and pages, as you can see there, it says 10,322 results, an epic amount of pictures to go through, but you just kind of scroll down and until something catches your eye, that gets a sense of what you're trying to get across, basically. So I did that, and then after, maybe a whole afternoon of scrolling, I came across somebody called Ellie Pukangas. Now, Ellie is a fantastic artist, and she writes and draws a webcomic called Tistow, some of the art of which you can see there. That's tistow.uk for her website, but you can also go to her DeviantArt page there and look up all the stuff. And I initially contacted Ellie about working with her on this, but turned out that her schedule was going to be incredibly busy, so she wasn't able to do it. However, she did recommend a friend of hers that often helps her with Tistow, and they kind of have a cross-platform webcomic. And that person was Michael Hankinen. So Michael is also a webcomic creator. He helps out with one called Small Trolls, but also his main webcomic is called Year in Hereafter, which is fantastic. So if you go to his DeviantArt page and look through all of his art, absolutely incredible. michaelhankinen.deviantart.com. So I got in touch with Michael, and then turned out that he was available, and we got started. I kind of sent him an outline of what Milford Green was about, and then showed him the script as well, and he was keen as mustard, as we say in the UK. So starting on the concept art, I sent across some descriptions for like 5 main characters. The first being Alfie, who's our main character, our socially awkward inventor, and he nailed it on the first try, as with Mary as well, who was the love interest of Alfie. Got it absolutely perfect. Now, Mary in Milford Green has a boyfriend called George. And this was the first attempt of George. My first initial thoughts were kind of like the bad guy from Oliver Twist. What's his name again? Sykes. I can't remember his first name. But Oliver Reed plays him. So Sykes was kind of what I had in my head. And then it turned out that maybe that's a little bit too rough. Why would Mary be with him? And so I rethought it and kind of thought more along the lines of Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. And he ended up looking like this, which is how he looks in the comic. So when kind of going through the concept art stage, it really helps to think it out. And if something doesn't feel right, definitely say something to your artist and kind of work through it, so that you make sure that everything is going to be perfect when you get running into the creation process. So after that, then we moved on to the good alien, who's the alien that crash lands in front of Alfie, called Fandog. So these were the initial concepts of Fandog, and kind of had an idea of kind of like tribal type style, and Michael nailed it in terms of that, but kind of what I had in mind for the actual comic, it didn't quite feel right, so I kind of rethought it through, and I kind of liked the look of it, so it ended up looking more like this, which is kind of more kind of official, having uniform, and more kind of technological maybe. Yeah, it's only just a subtle change, but I think that kind of sets the tone for the type of being that a fun dog is. And then the last one was the Synex. So initially we were kind of thinking of orange eyes for this, but then we kind of landed more on green because his staff, Lord Katov's staff, was kind of green and things. So I thought, it'd look better if it was green. But kind of the initial thoughts that I had on this was actually the evil aliens in The Fifth Element. So if you've ever seen that, kind of, you get a bit of a feeling of this, but obviously Michael made it his own as well. So it's fantastic work there from Michael. So we'd got through the concept art stage, or at least the character concept art stage, and it was time to move on to the cover. So I gave, again, Michael an initial description of what the cover should look like, and this is what he came up with. Pretty much nailed it straight out of the gate. However, I was kind of thinking more kind of like a full cover that wrapped around the actual book itself. So I did my own drawing. As you can see, it's not very good, but it kind of gets the point across. Just an A4 that I took a photo of and sent to Michael. That the alien spacecraft needs to go the other way, and so therefore Alfie should be faced the other way, kind of where the sun is, where the hills are, where the title is, where the creator name should probably be, and that gave him all he needed. And this is what he sent back, and I was like, yeah, that's absolutely perfect. And then after a few days, then he came back with what is just an incredible image, and I couldn't believe it when I saw it. Is the front cover, or at least without the title and things. A fantastic image that is just incredible, and kind of really tells a lot of the story without too much. So the main thing was that Alfie was kind of sitting on his own with the village in the background. The sun was setting, but there was this flying vehicle shooting across the sky with kind of like a smoke trail. And kind of, obviously his outfit is Victorian, so you're thinking, why is there something shooting across the sky when he's Victorian? And so, yeah, that kind of really draws people in, I think, to Milford Green. So now that we kind of had the cover image, it was time to move on to the title. And so we came up with a couple, and I tried my hand at one again, obviously just for Michael, just to kind of play around with. But those again didn't really feel right, and we tried it on the cover and it just didn't look right at all, until Michael came up with this, which when I saw it on the cover, it just felt right. I just knew that's it. It's kind of got this Victorian feel, almost circusy as well, but it was just absolutely ideal, and just felt right. So for any creators that are watching this, it's got to feel right. Make sure that you keep on searching for when it feels right. So title done, cover image done, put them together, looks absolutely fantastic. Now I'm starting to think for the Kickstarter, which I launched on Wednesday 31st of January 2018, and there was so much preparation going into this. I was trying to cover all the bases and things, but I was blown away by the reaction, which ended up being like this. Basically, this is kind of what you get in the Kickstarter creator dashboard after you've done the Kickstarter, and I think you can access it during, but as you can see here, it took us about 2 weeks to reach our goal, and it was pretty steady all the way. Had a bit of a flat spot after once we reached our goal. It still increased a little bit, and then on the last week it kind of really ramped up. But again, I was blown away by the amount that we raised, and the fact that the average pledge was almost £14 for a new creator like me. This was my first Kickstarter. It was incredible, and if anybody wants to take a look at the actual Kickstarter itself, kind of what the story page looked like, the rewards and things, you can go to my profile, kickstarter.com/profile/SGL/created, and you'll be able to see all my creative projects right there. But as I was saying, there was lots of preparation for the Kickstarter, and one of the first things that I did was print off loads of Kickstarter posters and business cards, which just said, that had the cover image, when the Kickstarter was, 31st of January till the 4th of March, the fact that it's on Kickstarter, and where they can find it as well, kickstarter.com/profile/SGL. And I printed these off, and in time for True Believers. So for those outside of the UK, True Believers is a comic festival in February. Yes, February. And I made sure that I kind of lined up the start of my Kickstarter just before True Believers. And I did that so that I could try and ramp up some interest there at the same time. So the guys from Awesome Comics podcast were fantastic, because they enabled me to put a poster on their table along with some of the business cards as well that people can take away, and they also interviewed me as well. So thanks to Vince, Dan, and Tony for helping me out with that and making that happen. Yeah, it was a great platform, and kind of I met up with some other creators there and spoke about it, handed out the business cards to absolutely everyone that I spoke to, and started to gather quite a bit of support through that, which I think is part of the puzzle that is Kickstarter. So make sure that you kind of line up a comic con that you can go to hand out business cards, and kind of connect with people physically, so that they kind of see that you're for real, you're not just kind of some phantom on the internet, and that was massively helpful. But at the same time, I also sent out the posters and the business cards to comic shops. So I emailed absolutely tons of comic shops, and only a few got back to me, but those few that got back to me put the posters up in their shops for free, and kind of put my business card, Kickstarter cards on the countertop, and that's free promotion right there. It didn't cost that much for the A4 posters and the business cards, and I think it massively helped. And it's something again that you can share on social media and things like that, and maybe get a retweet from the comic shop, yada yada yada. But thanks again to all of the comic shops that helped out: Travelling Man Manchester, Orbital Comics, and Get Ready Comics, and all of those guys. So I'd done that, and then also I emailed out to lots of comic review websites, like A Place to Hang Your Cape. Also Down the Tubes did a post for us, and Pipe Dream Comics as well, who I met at True Believers too. So that was another great connection. So massive props to those guys for helping me spread the word as well. And then finally, you won't be able to see this that well, but Dave Cook of Card Shark Comics and Killtopia, were very, very well, they were great in terms of putting a post out on their Facebook page. So unbeknownst to me, like probably about a week or so later, Killtopia launched on Kickstarter, which kind of did absolute gangbusters, and kind of was triple my final fundraising. But I was eternally grateful to Dave for putting out a post to me, and I just kind of got in touch with him and said, hey man, love Killtopia, would love it if you can kind of put a post out to your followers and things about Milford Green. And he was like, yeah, sure man. So thanks again to Dave Cook, and that's another thing that you can do, get in touch with other creators that are running Kickstarters at the same time, and ask if they're happy to do that. But it's always worth trying to kind of touch base before kind of jumping in the deep end for something like that, and try and make a connection before, just so it doesn't come out of the blue entirely. But Twitter is probably one of the most massive promotional tools as well, and after kind of loads and loads of tweets and things like that, and trying to find the right tweets to reply to as well, I managed to get some retweets and likes from Nerdist, as well as Mark Miller as well, which was incredible. As Mark says there, flattery will always get you RT for your Kickstarter. So if you want to try and get an RT, a retweet from Mark Miller, make sure that you flatter him. And then also Dan Casey and Hector Navarro from Nerdist, they kind of put this out, they retweeted me and everything, which was fantastic. And then people like Joey Turnage as well, who's a fellow comic book creator, retweeting and saying very nice things. So make sure that you connect with people on Twitter or Instagram and Facebook, all of the social media networks. They massively help out and get the word out as well. So that was kind of the promotion of the Kickstarter and getting it to where it ended up, which was 172% funded, 376 backers, and just over £5,000 raised. I was blown away where we ended up. I wasn't sure, because I did want to get to 5,000. That was our last stretch goal, 5,000. But I never thought that we would actually get there, but we did. So thank you to absolutely everybody that did back Milford Green. It's greatly appreciated. It was an absolute whirlwind, and here we are now, all done, and I think it's looking good, and I hope you think so too. But now that the Kickstarter was all funded, it was time for the creation process. So as I showed you before, this is what the script looked like. The script was written beforehand. We'd had the concept art all done, ready to rock, and as soon as the Kickstarter finished, we rolled straight into creating the final product. So as you can see here, this is from page 11 of the drawn pages. It's actually like page 15, I think, within the book, but it's page 11 of the story, and that's what the script looks like. Feel free to pause the video, read through it, but then along with that, I ended up helping kind of laying out what maybe the panel should look like for Michael. So I sent him this, and as you can see, I am a pro stickman drawer, and I laid out what the panel should ish look like, and kind of the actions of everybody, and kind of just the names on the heads as well, and it really can just be that simple if you're a writer, just to kind of help your artist get exactly what you want, basically. So it just takes 2 seconds on a piece of paper, and then take a photo, and then send it via email or direct message. I mean, we ended up using just Twitter direct messaging the entire time, and using Google Drive and things like that, but whatever works for you, really. So from those 2 things, the script and my stickman drawing, Michael ended up with this, which was incredible for the sketch pages, because Michael ended up drawing all of the sketch pages within, I don't know, probably about 2 weeks, kind of with feedback from me, and that's what it looked like. I mean, the guy works so quickly, it's insane. But ended up doing that within 2 weeks, and then it was time to move on to kind of the detailing and the colouring and all of that jazz, and it ended up looking like this. So kind of from moving from those stick men to this was absolutely incredible. So we kind of got through that, and like all of the detailing, colouring and lettering as well. We went through a few different fonts for the lettering, but kind of settled on this. Kind of felt like it was Victorian and comic booky-ish. I was really pleased with the lettering in the end. And so next, once we'd finished all of the pages, the colouring, the lettering, everything like that, we had to create a poster for all of you guys. So there were 2 posters that kind of stood out to me that I kind of wanted to recreate, and so I made some mock-ups with the concept art of a Star Wars style and a Star Trek style poster, and had you guys vote on which you preferred, and in a vote of 70% to 30%, it ended up being the Star Wars style poster, and of course this was just the concept art. And Michael was going to fully draw a proper one, and so this was his initial sketch, just to kind of make sure this is the type of thing that I wanted, and I was like, yep, that looks absolutely fantastic, go ahead and start detailing and all of that jazz. And this is what he ended up with, and you can kind of see it here as well. For all the Kickstarter backers, you get a double-sided poster, obviously the front cover, but also the cinema style poster, which it just blew me away seeing that. One day I'd love to see that up, kind of in like on a billboard or something like that. That would be incredible. But just seeing it there in the flesh right there, it's just amazing. And again, Michael did such a good job with that. That is kind of the story of Milford Green, and that's the pack that you kind of get. The poster, the book itself, as well as the bookmark, which again is double-sided, so you kind of got the cinema style poster and the front cover on there, and also the Royal Oak coaster as well. The Royal Oak is the pub that's in Milford Green, and this is one of their coasters, and on one side you've got the Royal Oak, but then on the other side you've actually got the front cover as well, so that's a nice thing that we managed to get through the stretch goals. That was our last stretch goal, so thanks again for everybody for backing us, and it's just been an incredible journey, but I hope I've covered everything. It's quite an undertaking, a comic Kickstarter. You've got so many things to think about, and hopefully I've explained quite a bit of the ins and outs of it. But if you do have any questions at all, make sure that you follow me on social media. You can, if you haven't bought a copy of Milford Green, you can go to signalcomics.com/mg. That'll get you to the purchase page. But as I said, if you want to follow me on social media and ask me any questions through that, you can follow me on Twitter, Samuel G London, same on Instagram, Samuel G London, and then finally on Facebook. I'm not generally on Facebook, but I do run the Signal Comics Facebook page there as well, so you can get in touch with me there too, where you can also find out about further Kickstarters and projects that we have going on. So again, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for supporting Milford Green, and I hope I hear from you soon. Alright guys, see you later.